Eric Pryor is a former Satanic high priest turned Christian who now spends his time educating people about the dark side of Satanic cults.
When I was a practicing occultist, oftentimes I would come into this park and practice on various different holidays, lunar holidays and occultic holidays, and we'd actually have rituals in the park when we didn't have a space to do rituals indoor. So what I'd like to do is take you into the park and just kind of show you one of the places that you would start asking your questions and start looking to see, what the occultists are up to. There's two different communities that use this park. One is the pagan or occultic community, and the other community is, of course, the homosexual community. Interestingly enough, they go hand in hand. And so, well, see, here you go. Upon entering the park, you can see they've already got started. Okay. This is a pentacle. The interesting thing about this pentacle is it's an upright pentacle. This is not a satanic pentacle. Now, the reason why this pentacle would not be considered satanic is because it has one point up. Now, Satanists would reverse this star, or pentacle as it's called, and have 2 points up. Those represent the horns of Baphomet and or the horns of Satan. But now, right over here, I can see on a tree here, there's a inverted cross. Now this is satanic. This is a very generic symbol. Let me see. It's actually fairly fresh too. This here, of course, is a bastardization of Christianity, and it's a very common symbol. Obviously, they probably had a party or a ritual here within the past night or two. Usually what they'll do is they'll mark, it's almost like a path. They'll mark a path to kind of show you where the action's at. The colors they'll use will be white, red, and black. Those are the dominant colors of the Satanic movement. And basically, well, okay, over here, see? Here you go. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, what you're looking at here is called Voodoo Vivi. This is kind of like a coat of arms, if you will, for the demonic. And the implications of this is definitely satanic. When I showed you earlier the one pointed up star as we first came in, and I told you that the implications of Satanism are 2 points up. As you can see, there are 2 points up here, and someone has made it very clear they were probably worshiping Set, because it says Set here, so it's pretty obvious. Now this here, if I'm not mistaken, looks like a money Vivi. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were here in the park doing a money ritual. And this is very typical. This is the kind of thing that you can expect to see not only on crime scenes, but in areas where occultists hang out. Like gang graffiti, occultists kind of communicate to each other through their graffiti. On the rise there up here is a very flat area, concrete area, that is used often. I even frequented it for ritual practice. Well, there you go. You can see from here 666 and an eye. Now that eye above 666 is an Egyptian eye, the eye of Anubis. So I can tell by looking at this eye that these people that were up here were into ceremonial magic. These aren't witches, these are definitely Satanists. You look at these dumpsters, see, this is how they talk to each other. Now, what you see here, this is gang graffiti, okay? And this is how gangs talk to each other, okay? But now this is how occultists talk to each other. This here is a psilocybin mushroom. So probably they had a psilocybin ritual, which is not uncommon. Occultists are known for using peyote and psilocybin. And so this was probably a psilocybin ritual. Okay, here you go. Shem Hemfarash is a satanic invocation, and Halley is also part of a satanic invocation. There is a book out called The Greater Key of Solomon, And in the Greater Key of Solomon, you will see on the Seal of Solomon this word. All right, from what I can tell, from the graffiti and everything that I've seen, and what I see here on the concrete, it looks like they actually have the ritual here. Now, there's an N here for north, and there's an S over here for south. Now, while these are not the true directions, obviously someone had a bad sense of direction, I'm assuming that this is where they actually had their ritual. One of the reasons why they would use this particular area to have a ritual is it is on concrete, and it's a nice open area. When we used to come up and have rituals and we had a group, we would look for an open flat space. This is an open flat space. This would be an ideal place for them to have a ritual. Now, if I was a solo occult practitioner, I might do it in the bushes somewhere and have a little altar set up. So what you're doing is when you come onto a scene and you're investigating a scene, you look on the ground and you'll find clues as to what happened. Right here, okay, we have a rope here. This is a noose. And actually, if you look at it closely, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but there's blood on this noose. Now, this could have been used either to bind someone up in some type of a ritual scourging, or it could have actually been used on an animal that was sacrificed. When sacrificing a cat or a dog, of course animals move around a lot and they get unruly, so they would tie it up. But there is blood all over this particular noose. Now, these are the kind of things that you'd be looking for. What we have here is a medicine bottle of 2% xylocaine. For those of you with medical knowledge, you would know xylocaine, known as lidocaine, is a numbant. It's used to numb people, and for that matter, animals. And of course, if you're going to ritually sacrifice an animal, or a human for that matter, in a public place, you don't want them to be screaming in pain. So it's not uncommon for occultists to use something like this, and of course, here we have it. On this tree here, we have some more graffiti. It's in red, which is a classical satanic color. Now, what's interesting here is the number 9. 9 represents the 9 satanic statements. You can find this in a book by Anton Sanzer LaVey, which is called the Satanic Bible, and you will see that there are 9 satanic statements. This is the way occultists tell each other, hey, we're Satanists and we're partying. For the Church of Satan, and this is kind of like their crest, their coat of arms, if you will. This would imply that these people either have affiliations with the Church of Satan or perceive themselves to have affiliations with the Church of Satan. Everything that we
Satanic Church in America. Anton LaVey established this church under the freedoms of our country in 1966 and wrote the Satanic
There is a difference between Satanism, voodoo, and witchcraft. And what I'd like to do is show you different altar setups so you can familiarize yourself with how these people operate and their various different paraphernalia. These particular groups that I'm going to show you the different altar setups of are the type of groups that would most probably be involved in criminal activity. While you wouldn't find all this stuff at a crime scene, you will find evidence that they have been at a crime scene. For instance, you might find something like this pin here, which is used to penetrate a pulpit like we have sitting here. But then again, there are other things that might be left behind that would indicate voodoo. Now, voodoo is colorful, and usually beads and shells are associated with it. What you're looking at here is 2 small conch shells and some beads. Now, this is what a priest would put on the necklace, such as I'm wearing here. This would indicate high priesthood. You might find conches like this with beads. You might find powders like this left behind. And this is the type of stuff that would usually be left behind in a crime scene. You're not going to find candles intact, and if you do, you might find a candle very similar to the one I'm holding here. Now, you might look at this candle and say, well, what makes this candle different? Well, first of all, any candle that's used in Santeria, Macumba, or Voodoo generally will have a patron saint on the front. Now, this is the saint that they would be paying obeisances to, you know, lighting the nicotine up to, drinking the rum to, and smoking the cigar smoke to. But on the back, it'll have a prayer to that patron saint that is only indicative to candles used in Santeria, Macumba, and Voodoo. Another thing that you might find would be small vials like this. These vials will contain some type of a ritual oil. Usually these oils are poured over a coal in a ritual practice. You might find a lot of empty oil vials at a ritual site. What you're looking at here is a classical satanic altar setup. Now, there are more than one type of satanic group. There are rogue satanic groups where you have a bunch of young people that get together and they read books such as the Satanic Bible by Anton Sanzer-LaVey, or some of the stuff that is published by the Temple of Set, which is also another large church of Satan. But now an organized satanic group has an organized way of setting up its altar. What you're looking at here is a classical satanic altar setup. It's very Spartan. 2 candle holders. One candle would have a white, one would have a black. You'd have a Baphomet candle in the center, or a Mendes goat is what it's called. You would have a male candle on the left-hand side and a female candle on the right-hand side. You would have a skull, which is considered the barrier of death, and a bell to ring for each one of the 9 satanic statements. And they would ring it. You would also have 2 ceremonial daggers. One ceremonial dagger is actually used in directing the forces of magic, the way occultists would do that, as in directing their powers. And the other dagger, which would be called a bolane, would actually be used in ritual work. If I were going to sacrifice someone, I would use my bolane. It's considered a working knife. So in a satanic altar setup, you're always going to look for 2 knives. Okay, what you're looking at here is a basic witchcraft setup. Now, the difference is you don't see the bells. You don't see the Satanic Bible. And you'll see a couple extra things here. For instance, most witches are very adept at using the tarot. Witches are very, very big on an art called scrying or fortune telling. Another interesting addition is that, notice, the candle holders are wooden. Witches perceive themselves to be nature-centered religious belief systems, so that they use as many natural elements as possible. The other thing is, instead of having a ceremonial dagger like we have here that would be used in Satanism, they would just use a very simple one dagger. That's called an athame. Now, the athame is used when they charge the wine, which would be in the chalice. The athame would be used when they charge the wine, which would be in the chalice. The salt, which would be in the salt bowl, and the water, which would be in the water bowl, as well as the incense. Another interesting addition we have here is Kyrnos. This is one of the gods of the witches. And the center for any witchcraft altarpiece will have either Kyrnos, which is the god of the witches, or Diana. Another thing that witches will often have on their altar is a mortar and pestle, because they work a lot with pharmakeia, or various different incenses. Now, this is an incense we have here that would be used in ritual practice. Notice they're very bright in color. There are many different kinds. These are the kind of things that you might find left over at a crime scene. You might find little piles of colored, it looks like chalk, but it's not chalk. It's actually incense. And if you were to take it and smell it, it usually has a very fragrant smell. Another thing that you'll find is usually there's chalk. There's usually a piece of red chalk and a piece of white chalk. This is used to draw a circle around the ritual area, and it's called a boundary between the worlds. And then what they will do is make various different magical symbols in those circles, believing that these symbols will seal off an area. Now, witches are known for their artwork, their drawing of symbols, their use of colored powders, and of course the use of natural products like wooden candle holders, even wooden knives. And so this would be more indicative of witchcraft. As you have seen, the difference between the items you might find on an altar from the various different occult styles is subtle. When you pay attention, you'll see that there is indeed a distinct difference. These differences will give you the understanding of the type of group you're dealing with. And when you know the type of group you're dealing with, you'll also learn to understand how they think, where they'll congregate,
Go away. Mustn't tell, mustn't say. Mommy will get mad at me. Must pretend I do not see. Nothing happened, don't remember. Helter skelter, now dismember. Witches chant and babies burn. Mustn't talk, it will be my turn.
On medical examination, relaxed sphincter control, anal or rectal lacerations or scarring. The child relaxes rather than tenses rectum when touched. On medical examination, enlargement of vaginal opening, vaginal laceration or scarring in girls, sore penis in boys, blood or trauma in the genital area. On medical exam, venereal disease.
Unfortunately, all of the signs of self-involvement, rebellion against authority, Self-righteousness, disrespect towards parents, they're common in the growing up years. They're also signs of involvement in satanic cults. Perhaps one of the major signs of cult involvement is when the group moves into obsession. They get stuck on one idea, one type of clothing. They center focus on this idea and they do not deviate. They focus on destruction and on doom. They have many highs and many lows in their self-esteem. They have drastic changes in behavior like eating habits, cleanliness, punctuality, and attitude towards family and friends.
Most of the people we deal with, the young adults that we deal with, have other problems that are synonymous with even sometimes gang activity. They're looking for things that they may not have at home. They're looking for self-esteem. They're looking for something that they can belong to. And a lot of times these kids start out innocently enough trying to get into something that they feel that they're wanted, and people will form them and make their opinions to the point where they're really involved in satanic activity. Anytime you do have a situation where you find a ritual site or you find graffiti that shows some kind of satanic situation, then you need to look at it and investigate it. And I think the big thing is if you keep your mind open. Parents need to keep an open mind. A lot of times parents and people in general will close their eyes to things that they don't want to hear. If you keep an open mind and try to know your kids and learn what your kids are all about, I think that'll be a big step into understanding what's going on and then being able to identify any problems that may arise or situations that you might see that you might need to look for help and not keep a closed mind. Believe me, I've been in this business for 10 years and you're always amazed at what kids will do and the different fads that come up. And sometimes it may be totally innocent. It may not be occult activity. It may not be satanic activity. But hopefully if you have the open mind, you'll be able to notice that. When we get involved in some of these training groups, we try to talk to PTAs and school administrators and things like that, not only just in occult activity, but just keeping an open mind on what teenagers are all about nowadays. And they may be involved in this stuff. They may be what we call dabbling in some kind of occult activity. It may be just a rebellion on some form of Christian upbringing, something to get your attention.
As you observe kids that may be involved in satanic cult activities, be patient, be watchful. It's best to understand them because provoking them will only drive them deeper into the cult and that behavior. Teach the parents and the school officials and the youth workers to note these behavior changes and to take time to find out what's going on in their lives. Teach them to ask the meaningful questions and what the symbols are about that they might write on their notebooks and they might wear on their clothing. Teach these youth workers and parents to talk to their kids about the lyrics of the songs that they listen to over and over again. They have a right to know what's going on in the young people's lives, and open communication allows that to happen. Don't hesitate to encourage these parents and youth workers to seek outside help. Call your local support services for youth. They can be a great help to you. Never stop this important investigation into lives for the value Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, was linked to Satanism. He had a pentagram on his left hand, and he would draw one on the walls of his victims' homes. At his arraignment, he yelled, "Hail Satan!" Richard Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, that famous New York case. Henry Lee Lucas of Texas. Both of these men were linked to Satanism and ritualistic blood drinking. Stanley Dean Baker of Massachusetts. At the time of his arrest, he had one of his victim's fingers in his pocket, and he was charged with dismemberment. He stabbed his victim 27 times, and he ate his heart. Ricky Casso of New York. He required his victim to say, "I love you, Satan," as he stabbed him to death. Carl Drew from Massachusetts. His satanic cult killed a 20-year-old woman, decapitated her, they kicked her head around, and then later he had sex with her body. And in the history of the United States, only one case has been successfully prosecuted as a human sacrifice crime. That is the case of Clifford St. Joseph.
Okay, the way we broke the St. Joseph case was through information received through some sharp patrol officer work. A couple of our patrol units that operated in what we call our Southern District responded to what was a drunken party. It appeared to be a drunken party. And one of the fellows kept saying, "They're going to sacrifice him, they're going to sacrifice him." Well, what he was talking about was they had gotten a second victim and intended to sacrifice him. They had him captured for several days and had drugged him, and he had been drugged, and a lot of had been continual sexual activity, male on male sexual activity with him as he was chained nude in the bedroom and then sometime he'd be chained to the fireplace in the living room, and every guest would come, he would be offered to have sex with him, and even at some point they had a German Shepherd have sex with him, and it was beyond what would be seen in a normal encounter of gay male anal sex. So we followed up on that, and we were able to find that young man after we talked to the fellow who was babbling earlier about this sacrifice. So we talked to that young man, and he told a very bizarre story. The story was that this man had been captured. The first victim, John Doe 60, had been captured. He had been drugged, and he had been sacrificed to Satan in honor of St. Joseph. And that St. Joseph was the high priest, and that he talked of other sacrifices, but we found no evidence of any bodies, anyone who had been sacrificed in this area previously, at least the one that we've been able to recognize. So he then told us that how they had disposed of the bloody mattress, and that they had done the initial ceremony in a circle on the living room floor. And of course we noticed that when we finally went to that address with a search warrant, we noticed there was all new carpeting, all new mattresses in the bedroom. So, and what the officers noticed is there were so many things that were so bizarre that this citizen couldn't make up a lie this big, couldn't get that drunk or get that loaded to make. So the things started to fall into place. Everything started to make sense. And I can tell you that our investigation of that case led us into the very highest echelons of our society, professional people, successful business people who were associates, and some, one of whom we know is a unindicted co-conspirator to this day, because the young man who had been sexually abused, who was to be the second victim, we got him psychiatric treatment and got him strong enough to be able to testify. And he testified to all the things, the ritual that had gone on before his day of reckoning, to where he was to be sacrificed himself. And it is a very precise procedure of what he eats, what he is given to drink, and that he's kept in a sedated mood condition for several days prior to the ritual. We were able to prosecute St. Joseph by using evidence, physical evidence, because he was clever enough not to give us a statement. At least the statement he gave us was innocuous. He was very clever in what he said and how he said it. But one of the things we were able to do is corroborate the two young men, and with physical evidence. One, for example, we rolled that new rug back and the new carpeting, pulled it back, did a luminol check on the premises, and there was blood everywhere. And when we did the luminol examination of the premises, we found the kind of blood that we expected to find. Because as I told you, the body was almost devoid of blood. And we knew that wherever this had taken place, there had to be a lot of blood. So in the cracks and crevices of the hardwood floor beneath the carpeting, even there were small blood spatterings on the walls, the lower part of the French doors, despite the fact of a thorough cleanup that had been ordered by St. Joseph after they disposed of the body. They deliberately picked and carefully picked the John Doe 60 and the young man who was to be the second victim. And we were told that this is the habit. Nobody's going to ever look for these people. They're the kinds of people, and there are lots of them around nowadays, where people drifters, people don't have any real ties, and they were able to lure both their John Doe 60 and the other intended victim with the lure of drugs. A great deal of drugs, and they were very plentiful. And that was one of the lures that they were able to entice young men to these areas to look them over to see if they were possible suitable characters to be persons to be sacrificed.
What was the sentence for St. Joseph, and how is that all going?
His appeal has been, St. Joseph's sentence was he was convicted of first-degree murder, and his sentence was life without possibility of parole, and it is going fine. His case has been upheld all the way up the line. So it was a successful prosecution, good solid evidence, and it all helped to solve that case with some patrol officers being really sharp and following through on something that they saw that was unusual, and not discounting a person as being just a crazy, drunk, hyped up kid. That they took the time to say, hey, wait a minute, it's too many unusual things going on here. Let's if we don't know, let us call somebody who may know. And then by doing that, they gave us the lead that we needed to break that case. On ritualistic, satanic, cult kinds of crimes, you'll see a lot of unexplained behavior. Try not to rationalize it off as being just a bunch of kooks or just a bunch of druggies. Investigate, talk to people, identify people who are there. Ask those persons who appear to be really loaded, book them as drunk, book them as under the influence, call the detectives and ask. Look for unusual kinds of weapons, unusual kinds of cuts or wounds. And for example, a single wound, none of the wounds when you looked at the body of John Doe 60, just as a layperson, none of these wounds would kill him. Even the carving of the pentagram into his chest, he'd bleed, but this wouldn't kill him. And there was the fact that you have a dead body and there's no blood. There's some blood on the body, but there's no blood in and around the scene. Secondary scenes, because they've got to get rid of the body. They've got to get rid of it somehow. So we have to be very aware of anything unusual. Follow through on it. Call in help. Don't be embarrassed to say, hey, look, I don't quite know what's going on here. Call in the detectives, and they in turn, for investigators, call in experts who know how to deal, who recognize some of these things. But one of the things you will see quite frequently, though, they do leave their mark. For example, the upside down pentagram on John Doe 60's chest. We've had several other cases where we're dealing with the ritualistic in the Golden Gate Park. This case was never solved, but this young woman was in the middle of a circle, and all around her were pentagrams painted on the trees with her blood and painted on rocks. They display the body in certain ways. If the body appears to have some ornamentation on it that doesn't fit, for example, maybe some beads or some kind of pin or pendant that doesn't fit the rest of their clothing. There's a case I can call several years ago where the body was found, and this would be a different ritualistic group, for example. The body was in a circle, the head was decapitated, there were feathers sticking in the exposed part of the neck, and all around the body was corn, kernels of corn. And we later learned that this was a part of a sanctifying of a cauldron by killing an individual, by sacrificing an individual. Though, by the way, the head did turn up. We were told by experts that it would turn up. Now, this came out of a whole different part of the society, but it's still a different kind of ritual, where many times there's a big controversy in some parts of the country now as to whether or not to allow the religious use of animals. And I think the Santerias did win that case, that they can use animals in their religion. Well, you'll see things like this. Don't be alarmed, just document it well. Document it very well. Know who's involved, and recognize it when you see it. And probably the grave robbing is what most patrol officers are going to run. They're going to run into grave robbing, stealing ornaments from churches. You start getting a rash of stealing, because they have to have, sometimes they want to get, even though they're satanics, they have to get something that's blessed. So there'll be church robberies. So if you start getting a series of church robberies, or any church robbery where the motive is not totally monetary gain, it's some kind, relics are missing, like chalices and different religious ceremony items. Look for that. Other things I can think of now is that they also deal with certain animal horns and parts and stuff like that, certain statuaries that you'll find on a premises, and the bodies that appear to be part goat, part human, all in a man, part man in body, and you'll see lots of candles. They use lots of candles of different colors and stuff like that. But there are a number of experts around who study this phenomenon, and as I said, based on my experience and studying, particularly with the St. Joseph case and a couple other cases that have had some dabblers around, we capture that material, read it, learn about them. It's just like any other part of our society. It's here, and we as law enforcement officers will deal with it. We have to deal with it. And the best way to deal with any problem is to understand it.
In investigating homicides, there are some very obvious ritualistic markings that will appear on a body that is the result of satanic killings. But some of the markings are a little more subtle. And so what we're going to do is give you an illustration of this on our model and also retrace some of the markings that were in the St. Joseph's case. You'll note on our model that there's oftentimes a cut that goes from behind the ear all the way down to the throat. You'll also notice that on the carotid, this right here would be cut where the blood would have been drained, and oftentimes there's wax laid on it to cover it up afterwards, after the body has deceased. They will also put wax over the eyelids after they're deceased, and so those would be some of the head markings that would indicate a ritualistic killing. Another area that's obvious in these kinds of ritualistic carvings would be the pentagram or the inverted pentagram on the right and the left side of the upper chest. This oftentimes is the signature of the high priest. Another area that you might find satanic ritual carving is in the stomach area. And as was true in the St. Joseph's case, the pentagram or the inverted pentagram was carved right here in his abdomen area. And you'll note again the points representing again the goat's head. Another area we'll want to note is the foot area. And right here behind the ankle bone, there is oftentimes an incision, just as our markings would indicate. And beyond that, on the bottom of the foot, they will sometimes cut the flesh and peel it back. And so you'll also note that. Another thing that is oftentimes done in ritualistic homicides is a penis is placed inside the mouth of the deceased person. Now, as you look at the body of a person such as this, please note each and every one of these markings. You might just see one of the markings. It